Is Zach Ertz finally going to break out this season, or is it going to be another year of disappointment? Stay tuned to find out what we think. Hi, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Prophets. Today we're going to be talking about our tight end rankings. Really excited. We're getting really close to the draft, and now it's interesting because camps are running and we're starting to learn a little bit more about players, and so, kind of can't keep away from football at this point. Before we get started, tight ends are a little bit different. Some leagues force you to draft them and some don't, and so like a lot of philosophy comes into play here. So before we get started on just talking about players and how good they are, how good they're not, or whatever, what do you think, like as far as your basic draft philosophy for tight ends?
Yeah, a few things we'd say before we get into our tight end rankings to consider. One, don't draft a backup. Okay, it's a waste of a pick. Your bench space be used for running backs, wide receivers, things like that that you're going to need later on. Don't waste time for that. What we typically find is after around your first 8 to 10 tight ends, there's a major drop off in talent. There's a lot of unpredictability, and so you shouldn't be drafting injury replacements or bye week replacements. Those are ones you'll address when that need arises during the season. Once again, don't waste that time. Don't waste your bench space. The other thing that I think is really important when it comes to looking at tight ends. Rookie tight ends rarely have what we would call productive or substantial impacts in terms of fantasy football. It just doesn't happen. Now, I think the reason why is when rookie tight ends are brought in, oftentimes the tight end position is used for blocking, things like that. Secondary, they work them into the passing game. So when these tight ends come in, oftentimes they struggle with the schemes and things like that. So I think it takes tight ends typically 2 to 3 years before they can have a real impact. And so don't get caught up in all the hype when it comes to rookie tight ends this year. Those are just a few things to consider when you look at drafting a tight end. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, at first when I began looking at the tight end position and the talent that was there, you look at the top 3 or 4 or 5 guys and you think, there's not as much talent as there used to be. Gronk's not going to get 16 touchdowns. Jimmy Graham ain't quite who he used to be. And so I would say don't reach too early. You can wait on your tight ends. However, I think running down to about the top 10 or 11 tight ends, there's some fairly good talent. So I might wait until a couple tight ends go off the board and then pick my guy that I like. I think it's a deep tight end draft, but it has kind of a low ceiling as far as talent goes. So that's something important. If you have to draft a tight end in that league, I would just wait. And it's all about opportunity, obviously. It's all about where you take him that determines whether or not it was a good draft pick.
Yeah.
So why don't you get us started on your top 5 tight ends?
Yeah, my top 5 tight ends. So here I'll start with my top 5 guys. My number 1 tight end this year is still Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is my number 1 guy. Now, I'll say this. Don't let anybody fool you. When he plays, when he's healthy and on the field, he's hands down the best tight end in the league. And last year he showed that again. When he was on the field, he averaged more points in fantasy football than the next closest tight end by 3 points per game. So once again, he still produced. Now, last year, I had made a statement on the site. If you went to our website last year, and then one of the statements I made is if you're in a league where you're forced to draft a tight end and your league's 12, 14, or 16 teams deep, you could consider maybe late in the first round drafting him. I felt like he was that good, and there's such a drop-off in terms of where the next tight ends were compared to some of the other positions. I wouldn't say that this year. I think there was a mistake I made, not because I think his talent has changed or he's not as good as he's ever been, but we have to come to the realization that Gronk just can't stay healthy. Okay, it's been a long time since he played 16 games, and for that reason, you factor that in. He's still my number 1 guy. He still produces, but I lower my expectations. The guy just can't stay healthy, probably because he plays physical, he plays tough. It's what makes him a great tight end, but it's also what makes him such a liability in terms of injuries. So he's my number 1 guy, Gronk. Number 2, Jordan Reed. I like Jordan when he was on the field. He produced once again last year. He battled injuries. But what we see with Washington and Kirk Cousins, he likes to use his tight ends. He gets a lot of targets. So once again, I like Jordan Reed. And I think another reason why I like Jordan Reed this year is the loss of Garcon and Jackson. Someone's going to have to get those targets. And he's not going to get all of them, obviously. But a lot more of those targets are going to shift to him. So I like Jordan Reed. He's my number 2 guy. Number 3, I like Travis Kelce. And it really had a breakout year last year. He led tight ends in terms of yardage. He really produced. He really kind of came into his own. A lot of people had been for years saying that he's a number 1. He could be a number 1 tight end. Last year he showed that. Now, why do I have number 3 and not number 1 or number 2? Well, here's why. One, Kansas City runs so conservatively. They like to run the ball. They play defense. They play close to the vest. For that reason, I think, it lowers the ceiling a little bit. And then another concern I have for Travis Kelce is that last year he only had 4 touchdowns. And so that's still a little concerning for me why his TDs were so low after having as many yards he had last year. He had over 1,125 yards. So Travis Kelce is my number 3 guy. So my number 4 guy, Jimmy Graham. I like Jimmy back when he played for Saints and with Breeze. And I think it took a while for him to begin to click with Wilson. But last year they really started to click. And we see he had a good year statistically. And I think he could have it even a bigger year. Now, what I think held him back last year, why he didn't break 1,000 yards and have more TDs, why he didn't really have that premier year, was he was battling injuries. He was coming off an injury. And a lot of times he played last year banged up, and he said he was out of condition. Now, add to that, Wilson was banged up last year. He had a bad offensive line. Wilson was injured. He put a full season and recovered, healthy for both him and Wilson. I think he could get back to his statistical years that he had when he played for the Saints. I love Jimmy Graham. He's my number 4 tight end. My number 5 guy is Greg Olsen, and I like to call him Old Faithful. Okay, now here's the thing with him. You've seen his best years. Okay, so he doesn't have a ton of potential in terms of he's not this young tight end that's coming in the league. What you see is what you get. But he's a safe pick. 3 years in a row, he's had over 1,000 yards. We know that he's kind of that guy that Cam likes to lean on. Okay, in times of need, third down, red zone, things like that. And so once again, I like Greg Olsen. Is that safe, conservative pick once again. So Greg Olsen rounds out my number 5 guy. How about you, Christian?
All right, well, I have quite a bit different top 5. I start off with Jordan Reed. I like Jordan Reed. He got almost 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in just about 12 games last year. So I really like what he's able to do with what little he had last year. He's going to come back healthier this year. I like what you said. It's funny. I heard a smart guy said it earlier today. I wonder where you got it. We were talking today about those veteran receivers are gone. Pierre Garçon is gone. Deshaun Jackson is gone. A lot of targets have left, and Jordan Reed is the man. In an offense that loves to throw the ball, he is the guy. He's the safe check down player. He's also the red zone target. So I got to put him up there. I'm excited to see what he can do this year, especially if he can stay healthier than last year. Number 2, I put Kelce. I like Kelce. He's the man there. He's in another situation where he's getting all the targets. He's getting all the attention. But that does scare me a little bit. Conservative offense, runs the ball, plays defense, and he's the only guy you have to cover, really. That being said, he's so talented. He's such a big body. And you know who he reminds me of? He is the tight end, or he's the Julio Jones of tight ends. A lot of yards, a lot of catches, unbelievably talented. You can't stop the guy, and then you get in the end zone, get in that red zone, he just kind of disappears. For whatever reason, defense is focused on him, and he just struggles to continue to perform in that area within that 20-yard line for scoring touchdowns. And so that's why he's only number 2 for me. 3, I put Rob Gronkowski. He will miss games. When you're drafting these players, you have to not just account for how talented they are, but how many games they're going to play you. Quite simply, he will miss games. And I don't want to draft a player who I might make playoffs and be trying to go for a championship, and he's gone. And one of my best players, one of my early draft picks, is gone. So I'd avoid him. That being said, he's so talented. He's so athletic. He's got such a big body. He's such a hard matchup. If he can fall off a little bit, if he can fall down, in the draft, so you can get him a little bit later, maybe that's a guy I might take. But I try to avoid any injury-prone players. They make me nervous. Number 4, Jimmy Graham. I like what you said. He was hurt. Russell Wilson was hurt. And now you get them healthy this year, and he's going to take a step up. That being said, last year was very underrated. I heard people say how Jimmy Graham was disappointing last year. And I don't understand how over 900 yards and 6 touchdowns is a disappointment from a tight end who wasn't 100% healthy and a quarterback who wasn't 100% healthy. I don't understand where that comes from. I think they just don't understand what he did last year. So I really like Jimmy Graham. He's another guy I think will drop a little bit further in the draft than he should, and you could take that as a steal. Number 5, another steal, Zach Ertz. He had 78 catches last year and 816 yards in just 14 games with a rookie quarterback who did not play to the ability that I think Zach Ertz needed to take his game to the next level. I'm not sure how good Carson Wentz will be, but he's coming into his second year in the NFL. I think he's going to step it up. I think he's going to make improvements, and I like Zach Ertz, especially, like I said, in a PPR league. 78 catches last year. That's a lot of catches for a tight end to make, so I'm really excited to see what he can do this year now that his quarterback is hopefully improved. So who are I was asking who your next 5 are, but I'm curious anything you have to say.
Yeah, of course, having Gronk number 3, I think that's a little low. I get it, though. Now, here's the thing. All the guys that you mentioned, all those guys are fit in what I would call tier 1 tight end, so I'd be happy, really, with any one of those guys. I do have Zach Ertz is kind of a sleeper, and I'll get to that in a second. I wouldn't put him in my top 5. He's going to be my number 6 guy, but we'll talk about that. A little surprised you have Greg Olsen where you do it. Obviously, he's not in your top 5, but we'll let you kind of get to that briefly.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. You're right. You talked about getting to the postseason, and a guy like Gronk, is he going to play? What if you get to your postseason and you don't have him? And that happened to me 2 years ago where I got to the postseason and Gronk was out, and it was a major disappointment. Although I will say this, don't get so preoccupied worrying about what's going to happen when you get to the postseason that you forget a guy like Gronk. First of all, you need to get to the postseason, and he'll get you there. Okay, so you got to get to the postseason before you can win in the postseason, and Gronk is the type of guy that can do that, so he can carry your team when he's healthy. But overall, I have no real red flags with your top 5 guys. Anything with my top 5?
I'll get to it, but the 2, you can't rank Gronkowski that high when he will miss games. I can't see taking him as the number 1 tight end when you know he's not always on the field. And then additionally, Greg Olsen is high, and I'll talk a bit more about Greg Olsen and why I have him drop down. But it just seems a bit high for me. I gotta lower him for some reasons, but I won't spoil. We'll get to that when I'm up, so I have something to talk about for him. Okay. So who are your next 5 guys?
So here are my next 5 guys. My number 6 guy is Zach Ertz, like you. I like Zach. Now, for 2 years, he looked like he was a sleeper, and for 2 years, he finished the end of his season strong. So going into last year, I felt like he was going to have a breakout year, and he had a decent year, but not really a breakout year. Now, why was that he didn't break out? I don't think it was him. There's 2 things I think that really kept last year from being a breakout season. Things that I think he can overcome this year and have a breakout year. One, he had a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, Wentz, the first 4 games last year, he looked great, and he really had a drop-off statistically after that. I think defenses figured him out a little bit. He's a rookie quarterback, and that kind of held back Zach a little bit. 2, the first game of the season, he was doing great. He's having good numbers. He's seen a lot of targets, catches. He gets hurt, misses a few games. He comes back. It takes a while for him to get healthy again. Once he finally did, the last 4 or 5 games, he really hit his stride. It seemed like him and Wentz connected. He was 100% healthy. And I really feel like this is what we're going to see this year. I like Zach Ertz. He could be that guy that could end up in the top 2 or 3.
Well, something I didn't mention about Zach Ertz, and I like what you said. He played 14 games, but he didn't play 14 healthy games. And so, more realistically, maybe he played 12 actual solid games where he was on the field being himself, Zach Ertz. And so that's another thing to consider, but you can keep going.
Yeah, so I like Zach Ertz as my number 6 guy. Number 7, Delaney Walker. To me, he's a lot like Greg Olsen. What you see is what you get. He's a very safe pick, okay? Now, he's only had 1,000 yards, I believe, one time in his career that he's had that. But 1, we found out that Tennessee likes to use their tight ends. 2, a good young quarterback there. You got to like Marcus. He's a good young quarterback. They're not afraid to use tight ends. He plays for an offense that runs at times a little bit conservative. And so I really like him. But I would say this. If you're looking for a dynasty tight end, some guy that you can have for years that's going to have a breakout year, he's probably not your guy. I would say he's got a low ceiling but a high floor. And so once again, if you're looking for 60 catches, 800 yards, 5 to 6 TDs, I think you can trust him to do that this year. He's my number 7 guy, Delaney Walker. Number 8 is Kyle Rudolph for the Vikings. Now, a lot of people said last year that what he did was really a statistical anomaly. And that happened because they didn't have a good offensive line, and Sam Bradford had to check the ball down a lot, and the running game wasn't good, and that inflated his stats. What's changed in Minnesota in the offseason? I tell you what, not much. The coach is basically the same. The offense is basically the same. The players surrounding him are basically the same. Sam Bradford is a year older. I'm sure he didn't get more mobile in the offseason. And so I really see them using him the same way they did last year. In fact, if they have any improvements in the offense, which I believe that they will this year, the Vikings, I think that's going to help them.
Yeah.
More plays, more offense. whatnot. I think that'll accumulate more stats. So I think that Kyle Rudolph will have about the same numbers he had last year. I don't see a whole lot changing there. Number 9 is Tyler Eifert. Now, back in the day, Buddy Ryan criticized Chris Carter and basically let him off the team. He let him go. He got rid of him because he said all he does is catch TDs, which is crazy, right?
Which is, I wish I could catch touchdowns in the NFL.
Exactly. So, but Tyler Eifert reminds me a lot of Chris Carter in that sense. He catches touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine. Now, the real question is, can he take to that next level? Is he a tight end that can start to produce yards? And here's what I believe with Tyler. I don't think you're going to see 1,000 yards, but I think staying healthy, he could easily produce 65 catches, 800 yards, and 12 TDs is very much in the realm of possibility for Tyler Eifert. Once again, he's my number 9 guy. My number 10 guy is Hunter Henry. Now, I really like this guy. I really like him. Okay, I think the guy's got all the talent in the world. I think 2-3 years from now, he'll be a perennial All-Pro. But right now, I just can't put him higher than number 10 because as long as Gates is there, Gates is going to bleed some stats from him. And so I believe this is probably Gates' last year. And so I like Hunter Henry, but I can't put him higher than 10 until we see Gates really kind of taken out of that picture. So he's my number 10 guy. Christian, what about your next 5?
All right, so my next five starts at obviously number 6, Kyle Rudolph. I agree with you. Last year he really stepped up and became the tight end that we've kind of been expecting for a long time. People talk about how talented he was, but the stats never really showed up with it. I like him, 83 catches in that offense. That's the way the offense works. He's going to get 83 catches again. Not only do they love to use him in that offense, but they need their check down guy the way that Sam Bradford plays. And that's the biggest reason I have him ranked where he's ranked. In previous years, he was really limited by quarterbacks who didn't use him. Simple as that. A lot of times with tight ends, their success is determined by whether or not their quarterback throws to tight ends or not. Aaron Rodgers is an amazing quarterback, but no tight end there will ever be amazing because he doesn't throw to them. And Sam Bradford loves to throw to Kyle Rudolph. And that was the difference between last year and all the years prior, was that Sam Bradford came in and he was the first quarterback playing for the Vikings in a long time that really uses tight ends. And so Kyle Rudolph is able to take advantage of that. And Sam Bradford will be the quarterback again. We know that Teddy Bridgewater is not healthy. He's still kind of getting back. And even if he gets back with his leg, then he needs to, learn the offense again and get 100% mobile and get his arm back and get used to it. So, this is Bradford is going to be the quarterback again. And that's why I got to put Rudolph there. Now, this is the guy we've been saying. I'm going to talk about Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen is a good tight end. You're right. He's faithful. You can trust him. You can put your faith in him. But first of all, why would you draft a guy because you know he can be just okay? I want to draft guys who are going to be good. And I don't like guys with ceilings. That's just the way that I am. But he has some value due to that consistency. Here's the thing. He's aging. He's getting a lot older. They drafted that young Curtis Samuel at wide receiver, and it and then they got Christian McCaffrey, and I think they're kind of getting some new weapons in that offense. And I think that Greg Olsen will still get targeted, but I think what we're noticing is last year he only got 3 touchdowns. He's not fast enough or quick enough or big enough to score in the end zone. And first of all, I hate tight ends who are limited in the end zone. And second of all, he's a year older, and I think we're going to see him drop slightly out of the 1,000-yard mark this year. I rank him number 7 due to that ceiling and the fact that he's aging, but I like him as a person, as a tight end. Number 8, Delaney Walker. That's another guy. He took a step back last year, and I think we're going to see that continue to happen. He's even older than Greg Olsen. He is very old, and I think that age is starting to catch up to him. Additionally, they have so many weapons in that offense. The Titans have Marcus Mariota. Not only can he throw, but he can even run. So you get him running along with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry, and they just drafted that young wide receiver. I'm kind of blanking on his name. I want to call it Corey Davis.
Yeah,
Corey Davis.
Of course, you have Eric Decker.
And you have Eric Decker and Rashard Matthews, and there's just so many pieces there. And he's getting so old that I just don't see his role ever being what it was. I think it's going to take a step back. But I have to rank him number 8 because he's still got 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, and you got to respect those numbers. But Yeah, I think he's got too low of a ceiling. Number 9 is Eifert. I like him because he finds the end zone. As far as tight ends go, I think it's just important he can find the end zone. If he can, I don't really want to deal with him a lot of times. That's just my philosophy on tight ends. But he finds the end zone, and last year he had a bad year. He was injured and he didn't play a whole lot, and his stats were not great. But finds the end zone. He'll be healthier this year. I think it's going to be a good year. Number 10, Hunter Henry. Last year I put in my rankings, and I even wrote an article about my favorite rookies, and he was by far my favorite rookie. I ranked him as the number 1 rookie tight end, and he even impressed me with 8 touchdowns. You have to rank him number 10 because what he did and the fact that Antonio Gates' role is being reduced. But it's only being reduced slowly, and that's the problem with Hunter Henry not being even higher. I could see him being a top 5 tight end next year easily, but as far as this year goes, he's going to bleed some stats to Antonio Gates. And the number 11 is Jack Doyle. I'm excited to see what he can do in Indiana, taking over that role for Dwayne Allen. I think he can be good. Not only is Dwayne Allen gone and he's leaving a lot, he's taking a lot of stats with him, and somebody's got to pick up the slack for him. Jack Doyle, as the number 2 tight end last year, started over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. So I think that being primarily his role, I think is going to bode very well for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I understand you're looking at me kind of confused. You don't know this. When we last looked at our rankings, I actually had Hunter Henry 11, but I flipped the 2 just based on I liked Hunter Henry so much. And so that was made just a little difference for me. Okay. It's just how athletic he is and how good he is and how well he fits into the San Diego offense that loves to use their tight ends.
Okay, so I'll get into my next 5. Before I do, just push back a little bit on your Greg Olsen pick there. Now, you're not that far in terms of where you ranked him, where I did. You put him 7. I put him number 5. But you said you don't want to just draft a conservative pick. You want a good pick, right? Mm-hmm. But last year, only 2 tight ends had 1,000 yards. One of them being Greg Olsen. So I think that puts you in the category of good. But I would agree with you, he is getting older, obviously.
But here's the thing. Good isn't just yards. What is also good? Touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, in our league, how many yards do you have to get 1 point for a tight end?
It's 1 per 20.
1 per 20. If you get 1 touchdown, you get 6 points. So you know how many yards you have to get to equal a touchdown?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we would say. These rankings, it's so important for you to know your scoring system and plug it into the players. A guy like Greg Olsen, you're right, it has lower value in a standard league, but he has increased value in a PPR league. And so once again, knowing your scoring system is so important. Once again, important that you know that. So yeah, that's it. So I'll get into my next guy. So here's what I have. My number 11, Eric Ebron of Detroit. He doesn't excite me. Okay, there's nothing about the pick. It's pretty, but I think that once again, when he plays, he gets catches, he gets some yards. His TD is a little bit low. I think there's some potential up there. I think you could see a little bit of spike in his numbers, but once again, I haven't seen anything definitive that say that's going to happen. But once again, it's hard to ignore. That's his job there. He's the number 1 tight end, Eric Ebron. Number 12 is Jack Doyle. Now, like you, I like Jack, and I might actually bump him up a little bit. In fact, I think after today, I'm going to bump him up in my rankings. And the reason why is he's the number 1 guy there. And Andrew Luck likes to use his tight ends. In fact, I believe of all of his targets, 27% go to tight ends is what I saw statistically. That's a huge amount towards his tight ends.
So much higher than other quarterbacks.
Yeah. And so I like that guy. Number 13, I got Cameron Brate. Now, here's the thing with Cameron. I think this is a stopgap year for him. Last year, he surprised a lot of people. He did really well, but they drafted Howard, and that's going to be Howard's team, no doubt. Howard's athletic. He was drafted to be their guy. But like I said earlier, it takes rookie tight ends a while to learn the blocking scheme, to figure out the offense, whatnot. So I think Brate could have another decent year while Howard learns the system and really takes out some valuable role in that offense. So number 14 is Martellus Bennett. Now, I know a lot of people are excited. He's going to play for a great offense. He's going to play for one of the greatest quarterbacks that's ever played the game. And that's hard for me to say. I'm a Vikings fan. But you can't overlook what Aaron Rodgers has done. He's a magnificent quarterback. But people are excited, thinking, okay, now you put him on a great offense with a great quarterback, and boom, he's going to have a great year. But if you've noticed something, you look at the last 4 or 5 years, tight ends don't produce statistically in the Green Bay offense. They just don't. And that happened last year with Cook. When Cook went there, a lot of people thought, no, this is the year. He's going to have a breakout year, and he didn't. And so, once again, I like Martellus Bennett. I think he'll have an above-average year statistically. but I don't think Aaron Rodgers uses tight ends a lot, so I'm not all that excited about Martellus Bennett. Number 15 is Cody Fleener. Man, was that guy a disappointment last year. A lot of people had visions that he would come in and take over kind of where Jimmy Graham had left off. That didn't happen. And so, but once again, he still plays for a great quarterback. Number 15 is Cody Fleener. Christian, how about your next 5?
All right, so my next 5, I made the mistake and I got a little bit excited, and I already told you my number 11 and Hunter Henry. I wasn't paying attention, and I'm excited about him, and that's just, or my number 11 and Jack Doyle, sorry. I got a little excited and I wanted to talk about those guys, but so I guess I'll start at number 12 is Eric Ebron, 711 yards. You got to put him there because he has his portion, he has his part of the offense that he has his role, and that's not going away. And he gets a lot of yards. He only got 1 touchdown last year, which is absurdly low. So that's going to come up. I mean, if you get 700 yards multiple years in a row, you're not going to continue to only get 1 touchdown. So I think we're going to expect to see that come up a little bit. But you know, not maybe the biggest fan of him. Like, he's still not going to be a red zone guy, but he has his role, and that's a big part of being a good tight end. 13, I have Cameron Brate. Last year he really exploded, and I was using him as my fill-in tight end in a league, and it was very useful. I really enjoyed having him. Now, they drafted O.J. Howard, and that makes people very nervous about Cameron Brate. And at least for this year, I don't think it's a big deal. Like you said, it takes tight ends quite a while to get their role. Additionally, last year they drafted or I believe the year before, Austin Seferian-Jenkins. They drafted him a while back, and they were waiting and waiting for him to break out. It never happened. And I think that they drafted Howard to be the number 2 tight end. I don't think they drafted him to be the number 1. And here's why. When you sit down and watch a Tampa Bay game, as you tell, I'm obviously at least a little bit of a Tampa Bay fan, I'm a Mike Evans fan. When you watch their film, you sit down and actually watch their game, they love to run 2 tight end sets. They love it. It's very important to them to get 2 good blocking and receiving tight ends. They don't always run it, but they do run it a significant amount of time. So I think that they were looking for that secondary weapon that they can use, and hopefully he'll be good. But like I said, I think that they drafted him to be the second guy and not the first. And additionally, we're in camp, and we usually hear a lot about rookies and young players coming to camp, and we're like, wow, these guys are amazing, and they're so athletic, and we're so surprised how well they're learning the offense. And this is around the time of year we're hearing all good news, you know, because they haven't quite gotten in pads yet and really started playing, and, you know, it's all good news until the pads come on. It's typically what happens. But have we heard anything good about O.J. Howard? I haven't heard too much positive news about him, and I think that bodes very well for Cameron Brate. But I'll keep moving on. C.J. Fedorowicz is my number 14. You know, last year he had just an okay year, 559 yards, 4 touchdowns, just okay. But I think the thing to realize is he was non-existent. He only got like 1 or 2 targets per game in those first 4 games. In fact, I believe one of the first 4 games he didn't get a single target despite playing. And so basically you can eliminate those, and he got those numbers in about 12 games. Additionally, they've got a new young quarterback who I think will be a huge improvement over Brock Osweiler, who was just the biggest disappointment. And then 15, David Njoku. Opportunity is half the battle. He's going to come in, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets, and I don't know how talented he'll be. I'm not sure if I trust him as an unbelievably skilled tight end, but he has his role. They will use him. They're excited about him, and they like him there in Cleveland. So that rounds out my my next 5, my top 15. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I'll give my next 5 guys here. And number 16, I got Jason Witten. Once again, the guy's getting up there in age. We're going to see a decline in his numbers, but we've got to have him up there. He's still the number 1 guy in terms of tight ends there, so I got that. Number 17, C.J. Fedorowicz. I've got him number 17, followed by Austin Hooper at number 18. And Austin's a guy that's still pretty young. He showed some potential last year in offense that can throw the ball, and I think he's a guy that could surprise a few. I'm not convinced to label him as a breakout star at this point, but I would keep my eye on him a little bit. Number 19 is Dwayne Allen. Okay, draft Dwayne Allen because you know that Gronk's going to get hurt. And so when he inevitably gets hurt, he has value. And that's why I don't have a problem using Gronk and then handcuffing him to a guy like him because I can get those stats back through a good handcuff.
And I'll just say something real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, and that's why I put Gronk down. You have to draft 2 tight ends to get the value of 1. I'm not doing that. Like, I'll just draft 1, and have that security, and then keep an extra bench space to put on a sleeper I like. But that's, I guess, maybe just different philosophy types.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, Dwayne Allen won't get drafted. He'll be out there and you can pick him up. But I highly doubt that he'll still be seen out there after most drafts. He's going to get drafted by somebody. Once again, got to look at number 19, Dwayne Allen, simply because they love to use their tight ends. Gronk's going to get hurt, probably. Number 20 is Ladarius Green. And if it's okay with you, I'm just going to round out my next couple picks, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, you just roll through whatever
I'll roll through real quick here. We got number 21, Vance McDonald. I like Vance. There's times where he's shown a lot of potential. He's shown the ability to catch the ball, get downfield. Now you got a new coach. We got some changes in the offseason. And we'll see kind of what happens there. He's a guy that I keep an eye on. Number 22, Charles Clay. Another pick that's not pretty, but, if you need a bye-week fill, he's somebody to keep an eye on. Antonio Gates. Great guy. He's at the end of his career. I would maybe consider him if the situation was right and I need a bye week film. Beyond that, I don't see any value in Gates at this point. Number 24, David Njoku. Now, I said be careful with rookie tight ends, and then I would still say that's why I have him 24 and not where you had him ranked, because he is a rookie. But it is interesting because half the battle in fantasy football is getting an opportunity to play. You need to get on the field to produce, and they cut Barnage. Yeah. Which really surprised me. They cut a veteran tight end and basically are rolling out with this guy being their number 1 guy. So he's going to get a shot to be their guy. He's going to get some looks. He's going to see some targets. So he's a guy I have at number 24. David Njoku, number 24. How about you, Chris? You want to roll with the rest of yours?
Yeah, so I'll just round it out to 20. And I didn't rank too far. I didn't rank to 32 or beyond for tight ends, and that's because, like we've been talking a lot about, where you're going to draft the 29th ranked tight end. That's terrible. If you're doing that, you need to rethink your strategy, or maybe something that nobody else knows. But I'll get going. Number 16, Dwayne Allen. Put him there. Just when Gronk gets hurt, he's a good tight end. The Patriots will use him. He will get his yards. He'll get his catches. He'll get a couple touchdowns. I'd like him. He is one Gronk season-ending injury away from being a top 8 tight end, a top maybe even 5 possibly. That's how talented I think he is. Number 17, Kobe Fleener. With the loss of Brandon Cooks, Kobe Fleener maybe will pick up some of those targets, and I think he could maybe take his game a little bit to the next level. I'm not a huge fan on him, but he got 600 yards. It's all right. 18, Jason Witten. He's getting older. That's one of those high floor, low ceiling situations. Maybe pick him up if you need him for 1 week at a time or whatever. 19, Martellus Bennett. He is so talented, I had to rank him, but being for Green Bay, he's just not going to be able to be what he was last year. I don't think he'll get quite 700 yards, 7 touchdowns like he did last year, but he's so talented. I think he can get 5 again and some touchdowns, but I got to put him there just based on his talent. But, Packers, they don't throw their quarterback or their tight ends. And then 20 is Gates. Gates is another guy. He's old, but man, he's good. He's been good for so long, and so I think he's got 1 more year in him to be just all right, to be a weak pickup. And I guess that rounds out my top 20. I don't have much more to say. What about you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about other tight ends, not here today, but if you go to our website, Fantasy Football Profits, that's profits with an S.com, you can see our other tight ends. What we do is we have the rest of the tight ends. We go through about 30 to 40 tight ends, but what we do is we rank them based on trends. Neutral, up or down, based on information, how they're doing in camp, injuries, other things like that we factor in. So if you want further information, go there. There's one guy that I would encourage you guys that I've talked to on the trends. I have him trending upwards, and he's a guy that he's a rookie, but right now all the reports are that this guy looks like he's the real deal. His name is Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
Now, he's got Ty ahead of him a little bit there, and he is a rookie, so those are 2 strikes against him. But here's what Mark Bavaro said of him. Mark Bavaro is that tight end, retired for the Giants, and great. He said this: he's unbelievable. I don't know what he's going to look like in pads or playing football, but he can move, he can run, he can catch. He's impressive. So keep an eye on that guy. Once again, go to our site, and we'll continue to keep you updated on these chains. We'll continue updating you week to week, day to day at times, based on information that come in. And so I think this probably concludes the video.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. You guys have a good day.
All right. Take care and God bless.